Good evening, and you are welcome to another exclusive interview powered by News.Band Television. Now, today we are going to be discussing constitutional implications of declaring a state of emergency. And here's our guest. We have a human rights lawyer, good governance advocate, public affairs commentator, Barrister Inibehe Efyong. Thank you so much for coming, Barrister Efyong.
Thank you for having me. Good evening.
Okay, remember that you can join this conversation simply by raising up your digital hand. And our guests have asked that we release him as soon as possible. So this program is not going to be an hour, but just for 30 minutes. Now, let me ask you this. When a president declares a state of emergency in a particular region or state, what exactly does that mean?
Now, by virtue of Section 305 of the Constitution, and of course supplemented by the Emergency Powers Act of 1961, the president has the power, the constitutional mandate, to declare a state of emergency, either in the federation, that is throughout the federation, the entire country, that which will imply 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, or in a part of the federation, which can be local government areas, in a state or states, or in the FCT. The implication is that certain actions can be taken by the government in furtherance of the purpose for which the state of emergency is declared. These are basically extraordinary actions that in very strict legal sense or in very strict constitutional sense may not be permissible. But those actions may be taken under a state of emergency in order to achieve the purpose for which the emergency is declared. However, the misunderstanding that a lot of people have is that when a state of emergency is declared, it amounts to a suspension of the constitutional order. That is not correct. Let me simplify it. What I am saying is that declaration of a state of emergency does not amount to a suspension of the Constitution or the application of the Constitution. It also does not mean that the rights of the citizens have been abrogated. It is only that the president, as I said, is authorized, for example, to deploy the army, the military, to take certain actions. Movement can be restricted. Certain fundamental rights of Nigerians may be limited. I said limited, not taken away. That is when it is said that a state of emergency has been declared. In some instances, the president can also devote funds to achieve the purpose of that emergency. And of course, certain machineries have to be put in place. But do not forget that the incidences or the consequences of making that proclamation cannot be determined except as prescribed in the instrument through which that proclamation is made. That is in the official gazette of the federal government of Nigeria. Therefore, the fact that a state of emergency is declared does not mean that, for example, that a governor of a state is going to be removed from office. This misnomer that if a state of emergency is declared, it will mean that a governor of a state is going to be removed is wrong. What happened in Plateau State during Obasanjo's tenure was unconstitutional. And that was the matter that was litigated up to the Supreme Court in the case of Plateau State of Nigeria versus President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. So, conclusively, when that proclamation is made, it is for the president to, in specifics, with particularity, enumerate, as I said, what the incidences of that proclamation would be, and of course, state how that will affect governance within the geographical territory covered by that proclamation.
All right, sir. Now, what's your opinion about the threatening statement attributed to the Attorney General of the Federation, that's Abubakar Malami, that the federal government may declare a state of emergency in Anambra State to deal with the rising state of insecurity in that particular state?
I do not believe for a second that there is a basis in law or a constitutional basis for a state of emergency to be declared in Anambra State. I find it very mischievous that this idea is being muted, that someone is even contemplating declaring a state of emergency in order for election to take place in a state. Let the government begin by admitting that it has failed in its constitutional responsibility to safeguard life and property. Because under Section 14, subsection 2, paragraph B of the Constitution, the primary responsibility of the government is security and welfare of the people. So where, as we have seen in the Southeast, insecurity has ravaged the region, the government has to take responsibility for that insecurity. And I dare say that the government is responsible for the security in the Southeast in two ways. The first is because at the heart of the agitation, at the heart of the militancy, if I should use that expression, in the Southeast, is a perception that this regime, the Buhari regime, is one that is on a very vindictive mission to persecute a section of the country. Because this president has not hidden the fact that he's a divisive figure. He has elevated nepotism to official policy of state. This has contributed to the crisis. Again, the gross mismanagement of the IPOP agitation. When they started the protest, what was the response? It was not a civil response. It was not a civilized response. It was not a legal response. The president resorted to a dictatorial mechanism of addressing civic agitation by deploying Operation Python dance, militarizing the Southeast, and the military went killing people, rampaging, causing havoc. No, there was no attempt at accountability. They went and got IPOP proscribed in a very questionable manner. That now led to IPOP members going underground, which eventually resulted in this armed struggle. I do not support the violence, but I want to say that I do not believe that it is proper in law or in fact for a state of emergency to be declared simply because politicians want to contest election. If the basis for the proclamation or the rumored intention, as alluded to by the Attorney General, is that there is insecurity, one begs the question, or it begs the question, why he has not made similar comments, or why there is no similar intention for the states in the Northwest, in the Northeast, and even in the North Central, like Zamfara. Zamfara is basically a no-go area today. The president's own state, Katsina, and even his own state of residence, Kaduna, is nothing to write home about. People are being slaughtered in their dozens, in their hundreds on a daily basis. School pupils are being kidnapped. In many parts of the North today, people cannot go to school. Yet no state of emergency has been declared. We have not seen such swift, such drastic action being contemplated. But in the case of the Southeast, it has always been over militarization. So I do not believe that election without more is sufficient reason for declaring a state of emergency. Because at the end of the day, the question is, people have the right to vote, franchise, and this is my position on the matter. I do not believe that IPOP or Eastern Security Network or supporters of Nnamdi Kanu should use force to compel people to boycott election. I think that would be I don't think that would be in the interest of the Igbos. I don't think that would be in the interest of the region. You would only have given the political establishment the leverage to militarize the election and even rig the outcome of the process and manipulate the process. Let people be allowed to vote, because there is need for the people of Anambra State to determine who their governor should be. But whether the threat of election boycott or no election is sufficient for state of emergency to be declared, my answer is no. That is my position.
All right. Remember that you can join this conversation simply by raising up your digital hand. Now try to accommodate as much questions and comments as possible. Like you've rightly said, most of the conditions needed to declare a state of emergency, according to the 1999 Constitution as amended, such as breakdown of public order and public safety, occurrence of any imminent danger, public danger, and etc., are present in various states in Nigeria. Now, the presidency have failed to declare a state of emergency there. Why do you think this is happening? And haven't we reached a stage where that option is necessary?
I read where Obiano, the governor of Anambra State, said after meeting Buhari that the president is averse to declaring a state of emergency. I hope that is true, because I don't think that action should be taken. But let me make this point. We have today a chief law officer of the Federation in the person of Abubakar Malami, who in the last 6 years, or since he became the Attorney General, has taken positions which cannot be said to be in the public interest. He has continued to go about as if he's representing a sectional interest, a partisan interest, or a primordial interest. He is supposed to be the chief law officer of the Federation, not the chief law officer of APC, not the chief law officer of Buhari. He's not the legal advisor of the president. I don't think many people are aware that the Attorney General, the position of the Attorney General is different from the legal advisor to the president. Malami is not a lawyer to Buhari. Buhari has his own essay on legal affairs. In fact, there is even what they call a state house council in the villa. Many Nigerians are not aware of this, that the AGF is not the personal lawyer or attorney of the president. He represents the country, even though he's accountable to the president and appointed by the president. But his loyalty, his primary loyalty, should be to the Constitution. That is why the Constitution, in section 147, says that in the discharge of his functions, the Attorney General shall have regard to the interest of the public, the interest of justice, and so on and so forth. So his statement is condemnable, his statement is untenable, his statement is unfortunate. Why has the president not made similar threats? Why has the president not made similar threats through Malami? Because I don't believe Malami made that statement on his own. I think they are just deceiving Nigerians. I don't see how Malami will come out and say that a state of emergency is being contemplated or has not been ruled out, as he put it, or cannot be ruled out, without having some form of interface with the president. That is beyond him. This is not just an executive matter. This is a presidential matter. It's a presidential power. Under the Constitution, I have always made a distinction between presidential powers and executive powers. Presidential powers are powers that are exclusive to the president. Executive powers are powers that are delegable by the president. That is power that the president can delegate to the vice president or ministers or other persons in the government of the federation. But there are powers that are exclusively domiciled in the office of the president, such as proclamation of a state of emergency, prerogative of mercy, and so on and so forth. These are
I'm sorry, Barrister Ifyong, let me just interject here a bit. Now, the question is, the killings in the Middle Belt region and the North, the core North, haven't we reached a stage where declaring a state of emergency is necessary in those regions?
Look, I did address this question earlier. At the end of the day, these are just semantical issues. Because when you say declaration of a state of emergency, in simple terms, what does it translate to? That is why I started by saying that the import or the essence or incidences, as we lawyers would say, of a state of emergency is determinable upon the proclamation being made by the president. It's not something that I can sit here and tell you that if Buhari wakes up tomorrow and say, okay, I want to declare a state of emergency in Zamfara, I cannot say what the implication will be, what the extent will be. I can only tell you what he cannot do. For example, he cannot remove a governor, he cannot dissolve the House of Assembly. But in terms of specific security arrangement, in terms of specific response, governmental response, it is for the president to define it. So I don't believe that merely saying that why have they not declared it in those states is sufficient. Because today they are claiming there is an ongoing military activity in those places, in those states, yet we have not seen results. So merely making a proclamation that, oh, I have declared a state of emergency does not mean that people will be safer. It is just like when politicians claim that they want to declare state of emergency in respect of Nigerian roads, in the healthcare, in education, and so on. These are just political gimmicks. At the end of the day, in the final analysis, whether a state of emergency is declared or not becomes irrelevant if the situation on ground is not substantially affected and altered. That is my position. So I am not advocating for a state of emergency in those states, because what will it translate to? The issue is that we have a regime that is not accountable. We have a regime that is not honest, that is not sincere about addressing the insecurity in the north. We also have a regime that is very selective in their approach to insecurity. When it concerns the Southeast, we see the president come out in his might, come out ferociously. We see him speak in a militant language. We see him threaten fire and brimstone. We see him speak in a language that is deprecatory of the people of the East. But when it has to do with the terrorists in the Northwest, they choose to be euphemistic. We begin to hear nonsensical things like bandits, banditry. Even Mohammed came out to say, oh, you cannot compare those who want to split Nigeria and with bandits. In the end of the day, what does it translate to? How many people have been killed in the north, in the region, in that region? You get the point. So we have a government, we have a regime that is dishonest, a regime that is divisive, a regime that thrives on religious bigotry, a regime that thrives on ethnic chauvinism, a regime that believes in supremacy of a part of the country over the rest. And this is clearly manifested in the attitude of the president to issues affecting the country. That is why Malami will even have the effrontery, the temerity, the audacity to say that a state of emergency is contemplated for Anambra, whereas till today, the Buhari regime has not been able to question any leader of Maeti Allah, even when they come out publicly to claim responsibility for attacks on indigenous people in Benue State. When people's land are being invaded, Buhari came out to say they should live to learn with their neighbors. They should accommodate them. Tomorrow they say the headsmen are foreigners. What I'm trying to say is that Nigerians should be mindful of the disparity in language. In political communication, language is very important because language sometimes is suggestive of actions and motive. So when you have a government that by their actions and their language, and even body language, is clearly discriminatory, is clearly partisan, you cannot but understand with those who feel that the Igbos are being stigmatized. And that is why when I responded to the arrest of Chinwe Latahagu, I said that, look, Buhari is ruling Nigeria with the mindset of the Civil War. The man is still very agitated about the Civil War. He has not recovered from the Civil War. In his mind, he still sees the Igbos as adversaries. And this has been shown clearly in the composition of the National Security Council. Because if you are going to declare a state of emergency, you have to call the meeting of the National Security Council. You may even have to, seek the advice of the Council of State. If Buhari is to declare a state of emergency today, and he summoned the meeting of the National Security Council, who is going to speak the language of the Igbos? Who is going to say what represents the feelings of his people, of the Igbos? Nobody, because you have a National Security Council that is sectional, that is ethnocentric, that thrives on religious supremacy, that does not reflect federal character. That is why the rejection of any suggestion to declare a state of emergency in the Southeast should not be taken for granted, because let me tell you the danger. If tomorrow a state of emergency is declared in Anambra State, I can assure you that is if it does not even remove the governor and dissolve the House of Assembly. I can assure you that we are going to see a full-blown war. They will go all out to massacre innocent people. Do not forget, it is already documented. There is clear evidence, uncontested, that Igbos were killed during the Biafran Remembrance Day, I think 2016 or 2017, where hundreds of IPOB members were slaughtered. Premium Times did a report on this. Amnesty International published a report on this. These things have not been addressed. Now you have an actor who was arrested for a cloth that he wore, that the military claim incited the public, and they humiliated him. Somebody of that social standing, can you imagine what will happen if you now give them the opportunity to say they are declaring a state of emergency? You would only have taken Nigeria backward in terms of civilization, in terms of human rights, because they will now go all out to kill, to slaughter, to kidnap, to rape, and to destroy. That is why we should not downplay the gravity of this matter. I totally oppose any suggestion that a state of emergency should be declared. The solution, for me, is dialogue and engagement. I agree that at some point, I agree that there has to be a point where, relative force has to be applied. I am not saying that the military should be totally withdrawn from the Southeast. No, because clearly we have some form of insurgency in the region. The burning of police stations and public facilities, the killings of people that are going on. These things have to be addressed. But you cannot use force exclusively to address it. There has to be political engagement, because in the final analysis, what are we talking about? People are saying they don't want to be Nigerians anymore. People are saying they have lost faith in their citizenship. People are saying they want Biafra. You cannot criminalize that agitation. You cannot, by merely prescribing IPOB, because you don't need to even belong to IPOB to believe that Biafra should still be a country on its own. That is the truth of the matter. And that is why the government was mistaken when they prescribed IPOB, thinking that it will kill the agitation. And that is why when I wrote that article, I said that, look, in the minds of many people in the Southeast, Biafra is an idea. It is an idea, and they believe in that idea. And I said, you cannot quell an idea by military deployment. You can only quell an idea, an ideology, by propagating a superior and more persuasive ideology. But today, you have a president that is not in a position to unify the country, a president that thrives on division, a president that came to power through division, through polarization. There is no way he can unify the country. So as far as I am concerned, I do restate that there is no reason in law, there is no reason in fact, there is no reason in morality for anybody to say that Buhari should declare a state of emergency. That will only result in more gross violation of human rights. That is my position.
All right. You asked us to let you go by 8:30. So just before I do that, what do you think declaration of a state of emergency is going to do if it actually happens in Anambra State, considering the fact that the elections are just around the corner?
Like I said, these things are in the realm of conjecture, right? Because under the Constitution, I can read it for you. The Constitution says that the president shall prescribe, section 305, one of the subsections, shall prescribe the incidences, the modalities, the implications, or what the effect of that proclamation shall be. I don't even want that to happen. There's no basis to declare a state of emergency, right? Look, the people that they are referring to as terrorists, IPOB, these are human beings. These are people who sleep at night, people who eat food, people who possibly go to church or the mosque. These are human beings. They have ears, they have eyes. They are people you can engage with. Why is the government, please, and this is maybe the last point I'm going to make. Why is the government selective in their dialogue, in their de-radicalization program, in their reintegration program? Why is it proper? Why is there no outrage that you have elected governors taking pictures with terrorists who are holding AK-47, like the Katsina State governor did? Like El-Rufai came out publicly to say that he paid terrorists to stop killing. Have you wondered for a second why that is tolerable? Why that is acceptable? that you have Shegumi becoming the official spokesperson of terrorists, advocating for amnesty for them, telling Nigerians to live with them, yet what has happened to him? Nothing. Nothing. So why is it proper for Buhari to say that he's this de-radicalization of Boko Haram members, the so-called reintegration of Boko Haram members in the society that's still doing it? Why is that possible? And yet, you are not willing. You have not even made an offer for dialogue. Let it be that you have made a reasonable offer for engagement with Nnamdi Kanu or members of IPOB, and they reject it. Let it be that you have shown good faith to talk to them. But he has not even done that. He's still threatening fire and brimstone. He's still threatening blood. He's still threatening to kill more people. Have you wondered why that is so? It is so because you have a sectional president. You have a president who does not represent the entire country. That is why his approach to conflict resolution is different, depending on which section of the country the conflict is taking place. In the north, it is very convenient for the government to say they are pursuing both peace, military engagement and diplomatic engagement. But in the east, it is military, and military. This is not acceptable. And that is why I'm saying that you cannot resolve this by merely military might, because it lives in the minds of the people. I, as a person, do not subscribe to Biafra. I'm not a believer of Biafra. But those who believe in it, they have a right to self-determination, recognized under the African Charter. Recognized under the African Charter, the right to self-determination. In fact, I have said that under the Constitution, citizens have the right to renounce their citizenship. That is, I can wake up tomorrow and say, I am no longer a citizen of Nigeria. Nigerians have the right to renounce their citizenship. It is there. People have, look at it, section 29 of the Constitution. Renunciation of citizenship. Any citizen of Nigeria of full age who wishes to renounce his Nigerian citizenship shall make a declaration in the prescribed manner for the renunciation. The president shall cause the declaration made to be registered, and upon such registration, the person who made the declaration shall cease to be a citizen of Nigeria. This is section 29 of the Constitution of Nigeria. It gives me the right to say tomorrow, I don't want to be a Nigerian anymore. So people are not even aware of this. And I said under the African Charter, there is also a right to self-determination. So if I have the right under the same Constitution to say I no longer want to be a Nigerian, what is the conversation about? What is the issue? This is what the agitation is about. You cannot criminalize a right that is recognized under the Constitution, although there is a process for renunciation. I agree, there's a process for renunciation. But the point I'm stressing is that the Constitution contemplates that somebody has the right to say he no longer wants to be a Nigerian. So what you should do is to talk to them, find out what their grievances is about, find out why they're angry. It's not for you to come out and say you speak to them in the language that they understand, that they are dot in a circle. Such insulting comments
Barrister Ifeong,
on an entire ethnic group, it is not acceptable.
Barrister Ifeong, if you permit me, someone is raising up the hand. Can we just take just one comment and then we'll round up?
Please. You can take two.
Okay, Collins, your hand was up. Collins Obodo. Collins, if you're not ready, we'll round up.
I think Collins was just appreciating what Barrister Ifeong was saying, because he gave a thumbs up rather than lifting a hand.
Okay. All right. I think that's as much as we can take then. On today's program.
Let me ask my chief this question. If the president has a right to declare a state of emergency in a particular region, and does in fact declare a state of emergency, is such acts open to judicial scrutiny? I know Daria went to court, but at the point where such a declaration is made, is there a process for the citizens, for Obiano to say, hey, or for citizens to say, hey, yes, we know you have this right now, but the way and manner you went about doing it is not recognized in law and therefore cannot be enforced?
Well, I do make the point. I do make the point that ordinarily, right, the issue of that proclamation, there is nothing that cannot be challenged in court. That is
Yes, of course.
Even when there are hostile clauses, even when there are provisions, even under the constitution that says that a particular action shall not be questioned, there is always some allowance for judicial review. But what I want you to know is that what will be important, what will be material, what will be decisive and relevant at the end of the day is not the proclamation itself. And this is where I want people to the point I want people to understand. It is not the proclamation, because proclamation is just an instrument, it's just a document. That is what brings the state of emergency into force. It is an instrument that is issued and published in the official gazette. But what touches the lives of the people affected by the area covered by the proclamation will be the incidences. That is the implication, what the president will state to be the effect of that proclamation. For example, if Buhari were to say, I am making a proclamation declaring a state of emergency in Anambra State. From tomorrow, nobody below the age of 30 shall be seen outside. No media house shall operate. No university shall open. Nobody shall be allowed to go to the market. If you were to come up with those kind of things, as incidences of that proclamation, of course you will go to court to challenge it, because let me even say this, the Supreme Court has ruled that even under a state of emergency, the fundamental rights of citizens are not suspended. This was in the case that arose in the Western region.
Okay, let me also put my question this way. In a situation where, as obtains in certain parts of the country now, where there is no official declaration of a state of emergency, but certain actions, certain incidences that is normally obtained where a state of emergency has been declared is being carried out. There are military operations. What are the constitutional procedures for deploying the military within a section in Nigeria? And why hasn't such these indiscriminate declaration of the military in a lot of places in Nigeria, why has nobody questioned it if, in fact, it is not provided for in our laws?
As far as I'm concerned, we already have emergency rule in the Southeast.
Yes.
There is an ongoing emergency rule, which is why I started by saying that this is just a semantics.
Yes.
Politicians are just engaging in, deception. We have an ongoing and active emergency rule in the Southeast. Have you not seen videos of military walking on the road, patrolling the streets? You cannot have that in a democracy. The military belongs to the barracks. The military are not supposed to be seen on every day indiscriminately. You have military soldiers now arresting people for what they wear. Look, these are things, Mr. Lumba, you are well traveled. You know these things. We are not supposed to see soldiers on the road.
So what is the procedure for deploying the military in some parts of the country? What is the constitutional procedure?
That is where the problem is. That is where the problem is. Section 217 of the Constitution. And that is why we have what I would describe as parliamentary laziness, the height of parliamentary laziness in this country. Section 217 of the Constitution states the role of the armed forces, but goes further to say that the National Assembly shall by law prescribe the extent and the manner through which the president can engage or deploy the military. Guess what? Till date, since 1999, no law has been passed to state those limits. We have the Armed Forces Act, but the Armed Forces Act does not address that question. So that leaves the president with arbitrary powers. The only limitation is the one prescribed in the Constitution itself, which, as I highlighted, say that the military, the role of the military shall be to protect the territorial integrity of Nigeria, one, And secondly, the military, the armed forces may be called in aid of civil authorities. But I have argued that you cannot act in aid of another when that person is not overwhelmed, when that person has not failed in his mandate, or when that person, the crisis is such that cannot be managed. So for the military to be deployed, it has to be that Nigeria is at war. You get it?
Or that the governor has invited
the integrity of Nigeria is being seriously threatened.
Or that the state governor has actually asked the president to deploy the military in his state.
No, let me tell you, is there any part of the Southeast, one word, in fact, is there any village in the Southeast that is controlled by IPOB? One village in the entire Southeast that you can say that IPOB has installed their members as leaders in a community. Is there one?
None.
I challenge you to tell me one local government, one ward, one state, or even one village, autonomous community, as the Igbos call it, where IPOB or Eastern Security Network or Nnamdi Kanu is effectively in control. The answer is no, there is none. All that it does is to ask people to stay at home. That is apart from the pockets of violence.
So are you now insinuating that the deployment of the military indiscriminately is in fact illegal and should be challenged?
Totally illegal and unconstitutional. I have said this before. The military has no business arresting a civilian. It is illegal and unconstitutional. That is the mandate of the police. Only the police has right to enforce civil laws. Because military ordinarily, soldiers are not ordinarily subject to civil authorities. Of course, there are exceptions under the Armed Forces Act. So when you see soldiers walking on the road, controlling traffic, like we look, the things that happen in this country, a lot of them are just acts of lunacy. There are things that sanity cannot explain. That you see soldiers carrying out functions that road safety should be carrying out, that the police are supposed to be involved. The other time, I even said that soldiers have no business, being deployed to quell robbery. And the whole country went aflame. People were abusing me that, how can you say that soldiers should not be deployed to stop robbery operation? But people didn't reason that we are talking about the armed forces. That is the highest, the state is supposed to have monopoly of violence. The armed forces is supposed to be the height of that monopoly. You have hierarchy, you have the police, you have civil defense, you have state security service, and you have Nigerian Immigration Service, you have Nigerian Customs Service, and other paramilitary organizations. You only go to the armed forces as the last resort. But in Nigeria, we see soldiers carry back for politicians. We see soldiers follow governors about. We see soldiers follow local government chairman. We see soldiers acting as PA to girlfriends of politicians. We see soldiers all over the Southeast. This is not a democracy. This is civic rule. You cannot militarize civic space. You deploy soldiers to quell protests. You deploy soldiers to stop people from opening markets, like we saw in one of the states in the Southeast. It is just an act of madness. It is just dictatorship. These are things that should not be tolerated in a proper constitutional democracy, which is why the Constitution has clearly delineated and demarcated what is supposed to be the constitutional role of the military. But since Buhari came to power, he's still wearing khaki in his mind. He's still going about with the toga of a military dictator, deploying soldiers, abusing the armed forces. That is why our military is overwhelmed. That is why to date, they have not been able to defeat Boko Haram, even technically as they claim. That is why you have a situation where, despite heavy military checkpoints in the north, the so-called bandits, who are actually terrorists, can go to schools and kidnap pupils because soldiers are everywhere. You find them in the parks, you find them at checkpoints, you find them in public markets, you find them everywhere. You find them at motor parks. This is not how to run a country. So when people say they want to declare a state of emergency, what else are they going to do in Lumba? What else? You tell me, what else will happen if the state of emergency is declared? That has not happened already.
Thank you so much, Barrister Effiong. Just before I let you go, do you have any last words for us?
I've said all that I needed to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And we have been discussing constitutional implications of declaring a state of emergency. Special thanks to our guest. He is a human rights lawyer, a good governance advocate, and a public affairs commentator. Barrister